All right, everybody. So we're gonna do our second day or second sort of continuation of the B101, the contract between the architect and the owner. Last time we spoke about Articles 1 and Articles 2. Article 1, as I said before, speaks about the initial information, and Article 2 it speaks about um, some general responsibilities of the architect. Article 3, though, it speaks about the scope of the architect's basic services. And we have to always make sure that we differentiate what a basic service is versus an additional or a supplementary service. Um, Before I jump into Article 3, I did want to mention these insurances that we spoke about before, because I kind of brushed through them very quickly. So going back all the way to Section 2.5. So Section 2.5 says the architect shall maintain the following insurance until termination of this agreement. If any of the requirements set forth below are in addition to the types and limits the architect normally maintains, the owner shall pay the architect as set forth in section 11.9. And we'll look at section 11.9 later, but it just says what's the premium, what's the difference between what you would have normally had and what you had to have to be able to be covered for this particular project. And it doesn't, like, if the project ends, like you get fired today, you can change your insurance back to whatever it was, but it's just on, through the agreement until termination of the agreement. You have to maintain that insurance. Then section 2.5, 2.5.1, it speaks about commercial general liability insurance, and the limits. They put the limits. And insurance brokers can explain this a lot better than me, but there is like a limit, and then they have something like called like aggregate and umbrella. And I really don't know a lot about all the details on that. So maybe in another section, I will pull up some videos from other people speaking about it that know better than me about it. Or I could even invite my insurance broker to one of our sessions. I'm sure he will be very happy to do this, thinking that he may get business as soon as you're licensed. So that may be a good idea. In fact, yeah, I'll probably try to get my insurance broker to come and talk to us about that at some point. So section 2.5.2, automobile liability, covering vehicles owned and not owned vehicles used by the architect with policies limits not less than whatever the amount is for accident. Um, so that just, again, it covers the people driving the vehicle more than just the vehicle itself. So if a person that works at my company is driving their own vehicle to a job site, I will have to have some sort of insurance that covers them, um, and anybody that's involved in the accident too, because they're working on behalf of my company at that particular time, like in the clock, right? So, or on the clock. So then section 2.5.3, the architect may achieve the required limits and coverage for liability, for commercial general liability and automobile liability through a combination of primary and excess or umbrella liability insurance. Umbrella is an extra that you pay for to cover you, and maybe the limits that you normally have aren't really covered in here. So you got to get that umbrella in excess to be able to achieve that. So technically, what it's saying is you're kind of getting a third insurance to be able to help you supplement insurance 1 and 2. And then it says, provided such primary and excess or umbrella liability insurance policies result in the same or greater coverage as the coverages required under section 2.5.1 and 2.5.2. Because they could be an umbrella that only covers 500,000, but you need that umbrella to get you to the 1 million. So then it doesn't work. It has to provide you with that or more. And it's talked about in the millions, by the way. It's always like over 500,000, a million, 2 million. Like, it's never the hundred thousands, honestly. It's like 1 million, 2 million type of deal. And that's from my experience. Then provided such primary and excess umbrella liability insurance results in, okay, got it. And in not eventual, any excess or umbrella liability insurance provide narrower coverage than the primary policy. So it can't be less than the primary policy. The excess policy shall not require the exhaustion of the underlying limits only through the actual payment by the underlying insurers. Um, I guess it's just saying that um, like the excess should 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 be more than the basis one, but you should not supplement it or change the limits of the other one. This is a lot of wordiness, but I think that's what it's trying to say. Then you got to have workers' compensation insurance, which and it says as statutory limits. It means what does your jurisdiction require you to have? That's what you should provide. And then 2.5.5 says employer's liability with policy limits no less than. So employer liability is another insurance that we got to look into. And then and for each accident, and it is kind of a version of the workers' compensation. But the workers' compensation is for something that happened to somebody within the premise of the work. But employer's liability kind of extends, I think, beyond the premise of the job. So again, we got to look more into the details of that. I do have a good Kevin Greenlee video that we can look at together. Hopefully, maybe at the end of the session, or on a separate note. All right, guys. So 2.5.6, professional liability insurance. This one is the one that I would say is kind of the most critical. We are professionals as architects, and we have to carry professional liability insurance. Um, any other business needs to have the ones that we have already mentioned, but a professional business needs to have this one. So that's the distinction. And it covers us for errors and omissions, and it has a limit to what we have in there. Then additional insured obligations. So this right here tells us that to the fullest extent permitted by law, the architect shall cause the primary and excess umbrella policies for commercial general liability and automobile liability to include the owners as an additional insurer. On the insurance certificate, they will put their names. Their names should be in there. And and an owners as an additional insurer for claims caused in whole or in part by the architect's negligent acts or omissions. The additional insurer coverage, sorry, shall be primary and non-contributory to any of the owner's insurance policies and shall apply to both ongoing and completed operations. So later on, you're gonna read a little bit about the right to surrogate, and joinders and things like that. So surrogate is if something was already gonna be covered by the owner, why would your insurance have to cover it? So the owner will cover himself and you will cover yourself. And that's the way to go. So that last portion speaks kind of a little bit about that. Um, so then section 2.5.8. Um, and now, by the way, what I know is kind of as much as what you need to know. I mean, I passed the exam, but I would want you to dig deeper into each one of these insurance than what I have done. The architect shall provide certificates of insurance to the owner that evidence compliance with the requirements. By the way, what does a certificate of insurance look like? So I'm gonna show you real quick from our office what a certificate of insurance looks like. That wouldn't be a problem. Administration. Let me just see if I find it quicker. So first of all, workers' compensation insurance, at least in Massachusetts, looks kind of like this. The certificate document. And it tells you, who you contact and what hospital you need to go to and so forth, and what the insurance company is. This one obviously has expired and we have already renewed it, but I have the old certificate. So that's what the workers' compensation looks like. A certificate of insurance. Well, this is something else. This is the company I use, ADP. I'm not trying to give credit to them, so I'm gonna take them out of there. This is another sort of certificate of insurance exception for officers, because you could, as owner, just say, no, I don't want to be covered by it. I would still want to be covered by it. This is again the copy I just showed you for the workers' comp. Oh, come on, wait a minute. Where is my insurance certificate? Here you go. And they call it like Accord or something like that. So this is what an insurance certificate looks like. This is the certificate of property insurance. This is protecting my assets at Flow Design Architects. Okay. And if I was to cover somebody else, this would say who the certificate holder is and the name of the certificate holder in there. So this is for, again, my property insurance. Then let's say the certificate of liability insurance is that looks like this, and you see how it says 1,100,000, and then 5,000 for any person, and then 2 million for general aggregate. That's the aggregate right here, and this is 1 million. So these are the limits. This is what they're talking about, and this is certificate of liability insurance. Then we have another one. This is the same one. I guess another copy of it. Mm, This is the, again, another copy of that. And here you will put the owners. And I have, this is the policy. They send this document of what I paid. This one was very cheap when I first got it. And they go up and up and up and up and up and up every so often. So this is when I got it online. Of course, I guess there's not so much private information there. So, but just see what it looks like. So you guys know what the certificate looks like, okay? So going back to that, you guys know already about it. So let's go to Article 3, the scope of architect's basic services. Before I go too far, why would we want to have an article like this in our contract about our scope of services? Anybody? Miranda?
So we know what we're getting paid for and what we're not getting paid for.
That's a good point. What we're getting paid for, but I think also it's like, what are we actually doing?
So,
Yeah, like what's the actual work that we're supposed to be doing? Um, so that we know, okay, we're supposed to be flipping burgers today. And that's the job, whatever it is, right? So we know. And also so that we don't do scope creep or number one nightmare. Scope creep is our profit killer. Um, it not only kills it, it makes us go negative, where we spend more money than what we actually earn. And that's not a business. That's, what's the definition of that? That's like gambling. So Section 3.1 says the architect basic services consist of those described in this Article 3 and include usual and customary structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering services. Services not set forth in this Article 3 are supplemental or additional services. So this is more money, right? What they're talking about, supplemental or additional. And they say that it's customary. And this goes back to our very good friend, reasonable and prudent, our very good friend, standard of care. As a standard, architects shall provide structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering services for projects. So it is expected that those will be included with the architect services. At Flow Design, we do a lot of residential work. Do we hire a structural, mechanical, and electrical engineer? No. Most of the time, we do it ourselves and we know what we need to do. That's kind of why we have questions like that on PDD and PPD too. You got to know enough about these things to be able to do it for a very simple building. You should be able to do it. How to size a beam, how to size a column, how to even know whether a column or a beam is appropriate. You should be able to understand those things too. So those are our standard services, like basic services. So it's 3.1.5. The architect shall manage the architect services, research applicable design criteria, and attend project meetings, communicate with members of the project team, and report progress to the owner. Okay, that's it, basic. 3.1.2, the architect shall coordinate its services with those services provided by the owner and the owner's consultants. If the owner hire an interior designer, shall the architect be coordinating with their interior designer?
Yes.
That's right. Right. So this is a very, 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 very good practice management question. So you got to coordinate your services with the services of other consultants. Even if you don't hire them, you got to still coordinate with them. They don't work under you; they work for the owner directly. You still have to coordinate with them. And then it says the architect shall be entitled to rely on and shall not be responsible for the accuracy, completeness, and timeliness of services and information furnished by the owner and the owner's consultants. The architect shall provide prompt written notice to the owner if the architect becomes aware of any error, omissions, or inconsistency in such services or information. Existing conditions is one example. Sometimes companies hire an existing condition company that does it. And then you're like, they're off. You got to let them know right away. But you are entitled to rely on their completeness. And if something is wrong with them and you didn't notice it, it's not your problem. It's not your fault. If you picked it up and you didn't tell the owner, then you got yourself in trouble. You have to let them know that something is wrong with it. All right. So 3.1.3, as soon as practicable after the date of this agreement, the architect shall submit for the owner's approval a schedule for the performance of the architect's services. This sounds a lot like the 821. The contractor shall do that. In this case, we're doing something like that. Now, in my proposals, I already say it's gonna be 2 to 3 weeks. I don't say how I'm gonna break it up between my like phases and things like that. I just say I'm gonna take 2 to 3 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, and give it a range. I don't like to pin it down on dates too because then you get held to those dates, and I want to have wiggle room. I also want to be able to outperform, like under promise and over deliver type of deal. So I want to be able to do it in 3 weeks, even if it's gonna be 5 weeks, right? And allow time for trouble, right? Issues to happen. So you got to provide that, okay? The schedule initially the schedule initially shall include anticipated dates for the commencement of construction and for substantial completion of the work as set forth in the initial information. To be honest, they only tell you that at the very beginning, like I told you, like when they anticipate that substantial completion should be, and that's part of the time, the milestones. Remember that? So you kind of just saying, here's how I anticipate to comply with that, right? And you're regurgitating that back to them. If not, then the owner has to update his. You got to say, hey, owner, we can't do that. You know, you have to update yours. Um, so then what's the schedule supposed to have? The schedule shall include allowances for periods of time required for the owner's review. How many days the owner is going to review a design option? How many days is the owner going to be reviewing some finishes? For the performance of the owner's consultants and for approval of submissions by authorities having jurisdiction. So you got to allow, at least in Massachusetts, 30 days for a building department to issue a permit. They could issue it in a week, they could issue it in a day, but you got to allow 30 days for that. So if your project is going out to begin construction on, like, let's say, March, your drawings should have already been submitted at least a month prior to that, or a month and a half almost prior to that, so that you allow for trouble, for questions for the building department and things like that. And then it says, once approved by the owner, time limits established by this schedule shall not, except for reasonable cost, be exceeded by the architect or owner. All right, that's it. That time is set. If it's changed by a change order, and somebody's gonna have to be entitled to additional compensation. All right. With the owner's approval, the architect shall adjust the schedule if necessary as the project proceeds until the commencement of construction. So you on your drawings could be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna take 2 weeks doing the schematic design. Okay, I guess they take 1 week instead of 2. I'm gonna adjust it accordingly. So you can make some of those adjustments, but it says with the owner's approval. So whenever you face questions about how should you proceed on some things, just remember, inform the owner. Like, informing the owner is never a bad idea. There's not one question in which informing the owner is a bad idea. Either during construction or during schematic design, it's not a bad idea. One thing I personally do, I inform the owner after I also already have a solution for the project problem, or a potential solution to the situation. So, like, I will create my schedule and then be like, okay, owner, here's what I think the schedule should look like after I have done, here's where we are. We are already 50% complete. I think we can do it in 2 more weeks instead of 6 or whatever, right? And the owner approves it. So 3.1.4, the architect. Now, by the way, why is it until construction commences? Why? Why can't you be messing with the schedule after construction?
Because that's not affecting the price on the owner's behalf. I mean, the budget, what kind of time and the budget for construction.
Miranda.
So once construction commences, you have a contractor who provides a schedule for construction.
Exactly. You don't want to step beyond your own realm. You don't want to step on somebody else's world. Your job is to deliver architectural services from schematic to construction documents. And that's the schedule you really care about on your end for the B101. For the A201, when construction begins, there is somebody else that creates a schedule, and you gotta administer that contract and ensure to some extent that things are being done properly. But that schedule is not your problem. This is your problem. Your construction, your architectural services, right? And even during construction, Abelis, we still are entitled to payment for CA. And the B101 says that we are going to provide CA. See, most people, like a lot of people don't do CA. I don't do CA for most of my residential projects. I don't need to. The owner does it himself. I mean, I would like to justify it, but no, they want to save up money and they will be on top of things. So they don't need me. So, but that schedule is beyond my life, my services. Section 3.1.4. The architect shall not be responsible for an owner's directive or substitution or for the owner's acceptance of non-conforming work made or given without the architect's written approval. This one is protecting us during construction. This contractor suggested some tile, the architect didn't even know about it, the owner accepted it, they go ahead and do it. Not my problem. I'm clean. My hands are clean. Now, why weren't we aware of it, right? I wonder about things like that. Why didn't they tell us? Why didn't we know about it? It's either we didn't participate in the construction administration process, we weren't hired to do it, or it was quick. It happened very quickly. But then change orders come about, and the contractor is asking for money, and we are the initial decision maker, which is a term that I'm going to be using later on. But we don't even know about this and how it happened. So changes really shouldn't happen without the architect's knowledge. But what he's saying is that the owner can accept non-conforming work and the owner can accept whatever they want. We don't have to like it. It is their project at the end of the day. But at the same time, we're not liable for those decisions, right? Doesn't make sense, guys? This is a very good one.
Yeah, but that non-conforming work should still be documented.
Absolutely. You're going to put it in writing. You're going to do an
Mhm.
observation report and you're going to say your 2 cents or 5 cents. You're going to say that ramp that has been accepted by the owner is a non-ADA compliant ramp. And I will have rejected it. And it is rejected by me. But the owner has directed the work to proceed. Period. Save it up. Send it to everybody involved and you're done. Not to the building department. You don't need to send it to the building department. I don't think you will have to send it to the building department. The building department is going to come for an inspection. They're definitely going to reject it anyway. And when they reject it, they're going to say, architect, did you approve that? And I'll be like, no, I didn't. It's non-conforming. And I'm expecting you to reject it. Because at the end of the day, the way that we play this game is one hand washes the other. At least all of us want a safe building. At least I would like to think that way. So architects, contractors, building inspectors, owners, we want a safe building. So if the building is not safe, the ultimate authority is the authority having jurisdiction to reject that. Because the owner can accept non-conforming work. The building department probably won't.
Yeah,
So-
and the architect can still reject non-conforming work if it doesn't comply with code and it's a life safety issue. But if it's something like the owner changes vinyl tile to wood flooring, that's non-conforming. The architect just documents it, but we don't have to go back and update our drawings.
And that's the finite line between whether we call the authority having jurisdiction or not. I don't like to be the snitch guy, but I think as we read the contract, you will find out we're kind of mandated to inform the authority having jurisdiction about things like this. Because we're kind of like officers and they're officers. Like we're we're protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. That's our mandate. So if we see something wrong, we don't document it and we don't tell the authority having jurisdiction, we're complicit. We're what is it? Complicit? I don't know what.
Accomplice.
Yeah, we're complice to the crime, right? To the issue. So section 3.1.5, the architect shall contact. There you go. There you go. The architect shall contact governmental authorities required to approve the construction documents and entities providing utility services to the project. The architect shall respond to applicable design requirements imposed by those authorities and entities. So this is telling you contact them. It's not saying snitch around. It's become familiar what it is that they need. Like I'm licensed in Florida. I don't know a whole lot about the code in Florida. It changes every now and then. In fact, they have more like they have the newest code. I think they have like the 2020 right now. And I'm doing 2015 in Massachusetts. I don't know a lot about that. So I have to call them and I have to find out about what the criteria are for design there. Right. So that's like square one. And I also like to make sure that they know us. Like, okay, you know what? Let's let them know. Hey, listen, we are the architects doing. It's like you, like a new neighbor that moved in, knocking on the neighbors. Hey, we just moved in into this property next door. Wanted to introduce ourselves. You know, my name is Darwin or whatever. Blah blah blah. So here's hello. We're doing a project in your jurisdiction. My name is Darwin Fortuna from Flow Design Architects. You're gonna be seeing drawings come through for this. Um, and sometimes I play dummy and say, you know, I just have a curiosity. So you are using the 2015 IBC. Are you also using the stretch code? But you know, Massachusetts they have stretch code. They have like every municipality could have changes to the code that they want to do. So there's the mass state code, and then there is the actual local like municipality changes to the code. So you want to make sure that you don't rob them the wrong way and ask them, you know. So then 3.1.6 says the architect shall assist the owner in connection with the owner's responsibilities for filing documents required for the approval of governmental authorities having jurisdiction over the project. Helping them fill out paperwork, assist them filling out paperwork, you know, submittals that they need to put into the permit and things like that. All right. So then we begin with our very first service, section 3.2, schematic design first services. The architect shall review the program and the information furnished by the owner and shall review laws, codes, and regulations applicable to the architect's services. So after you're giving the site topographic studies, your technical report, program, you look at all of that and you review it. That's like square one. What's the project? And then I that's when I start writing my proposal. After I know what the project is, where the project's located, what the budget is, what the laws and regulations are, because that's the only way I can actually depict how much it's gonna cost me to do it. Right? As a businessman, I want to know how much it's gonna cost me, how much I want to charge, how much I want to make. Right? What's my break even? What's my profit? So the first thing is review these things. And there is a clause or an article just like this for the A201 for the contractor saying before they begin construction, they are supposed to review the contract documents. Makes sense, right? So section 3.2.2 says the architect shall prepare a preliminary evaluation of the owner's program, schedule, budget for the cost of the work, project site, the proposed procurement and delivery method, and other initial information, each in terms of the order, to ascertain the requirements of the project. The architect shall notify the owner of one, any inconsistencies discovered in the information, and two, other information or consulting services that may be reasonably needed for the project. It's a mouthful. So this is our time to let the owner know that we understand him, and that we understand the project, and that we understand everything that they sent us, and it makes sense to us. And any discrepancies we see, this is when we let them know.
Right. So the architect is not responsible for programming as a basic service. It's under the supplemental service, but the architect shall prepare a preliminary evaluation of the owner's program.
Yeah. For instance, Miranda, we're going to do a new emergency department. There's a programmer that went through the process, and I would say they would meet with the stakeholders, right? That's one of the steps of programming. Meet with the nurses, meet with the community, and begin to understand the relationships and create some sort of needs assessment, right? And understand all that. They do all that stuff, put it all together, right? Me as the architect, I have already done, step 3.2.1, which is review the program, review all that information, applicable laws. After I have reviewed that on section 3.2.1, I become aware that the program is missing soil utility or secure holdings spaces for people that mentally ill, right? That come into the emergency department. And I am aware, because I do a lot of emergency departments, that that is a requirement by the Department of Public Health of that particular locality. The programmer did not allow any spaces to be put in there. In this case, I have already reviewed the space and be like, I can say, I understand, and I play it very dummy personally. I'm like, it is my understanding that the Department of Public Health requires X amount of soil utilities and storage spaces for X amount of square footage of emergency department space. It seems like, in my understanding of the program, we are missing those spaces. Is that accurate? Is that correct? Or am I missing something? That's our evaluation of the program. We're not doing the programming for them. Then the owner will send it back to the programmer and be like, hey, can you take a look at this? And we can email the programmer directly through the owner with the owner attached. This is the fun thing about it. When you are attaching somebody in the email, it's the same thing as emailing them through the owner. So like they are already aware, So that's how we do it. So through that. So it's all done. And that's what we do. That's our evaluation. That's when we tell them the inconsistencies. That's what we actually look at the geotechnical report and be like, well, you did borings all throughout the site except for quadrant number 1. By the way, we divide sites in quadrants too, and you're gonna see that in programming, Miranda. So quadrant number 1 doesn't have any borings. Like, why? That seems to be the best location for this, just from the get-go, just trying to understand it. And you can ask that, right? Or the other question might be, why don't we have a geotechnical engineer on this project? It seems like there's a lot of wetlands throughout the whole region. We need to have a geotechnical, So that's when you inform it. Does this make sense? So then section 3.2.3 says the architect shall present its preliminary evaluation to the owner and shall discuss with the owner alternative approaches to design and construction of the project. You've already looked at it cohesively, right? Step 1, 2, and 3, right? You create your evaluation. You sit down and have a meeting with the owner and say, hey, listen, after evaluating all of this, you may even make a recommendation that they need a fast track delivery method because you've already looked. And you know how it says in terms of each other. In terms of each other, meaning what's the budget in terms of the emergency department needs? What's the timeline in terms of the emergency department? Like, oh, the summer, there's a lot of action in the summer. We should be able to have that done by then. That's a problem. We gotta then, you make recommendations. So what's the program in terms of the needs, in terms of the summer, in terms of in terms of the schedule? So you do these sort of very interesting relationship metrics of all these things. And then you can make that evaluation and tell alternatives about the design. Hey, listen, I would say let's do a pre-manufactured building, prefabricated. Why? Well, the site conditions will not allow you to be able to have that done by the summer under these circumstances. You will not be able to meet that. That's when we do our process, right? The architect should reach an understanding with the owner regarding the requirements for the project. It may be, yeah, it looks good. Everything looks great. We have no issues. Or it may be, hey, listen, you're going to have to put more money into this project. We're not going to be able to do it. for that timeline, for that. Or hey, listen, you got to talk to the programmer. I can do the programming that is missing for you as an additional service. But that's why I said you got to reach an understanding and some sort of agreement before you proceed. You do not proceed until you have reached an understanding. Now, section 3.2.4, based on the project requirements agreed upon with the owner, the architect shall prepare and present for the owner's approval a preliminary design illustrating the scale and relationship of the project components. So this preliminary design, you have your survey, you have your plans, and it's just really big picture talking about here's where all the spaces go. It could even be a bubble on the site, a bubble diagram on the site that is blocked out. It begins to get blocked out. It may be like, before it's a building, right? Before it's a shape of a real building, before it has windows. It doesn't have windows. It doesn't have doors. It just has a relationship blocked out. All right. And it really, I call it a checking point, checks and balances, right? Like, we have different powers in the government. So this is a checking point to make sure that you don't start making a whole building, 2-story building. That's actually wrong. It's not meeting the program. It's not meeting the site requirements. Don't get too far into the design process wrong, because then you're going to have to rework the whole thing. You don't want to do that. Here for design, we call that step 3. Step 3 is when we do design options, but step 1 and step 2, actually, it's a part of step 1 and step 2. Step 1 shows existing, step 2 shows or proposed, and I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to confuse you, but it just says, are you sure you want an apple? Here's the apple. Does it look like an apple? Yeah. Let's now draw up the real apple. Right now we're ready to really draw it. I don't want to start drawing an apple when you actually want oranges, and I want to make sure that everything is good. It's almost like your apps when when you're gonna delete a document on Microsoft. Say, are you sure you want to delete this item? Yeah, yeah. So are you sure you really want this? Yes. Why? Because any changes later thereon become an additional service, right? Clear? So 3.2.5, based on the owner's approval of the preliminary design, the architect shall prepare schematic design documents for the owner's approval. Like before you even create the schematic design, you create a preliminary programmatic design, kind of like very early. And then based on that, then you begin to do that. And for the owner's approval, you send that. The schematic design documents, very important. Everybody pay attention to this one. What are those schematic design documents? The schematic design documents shall consist of drawings and other documents, including a site plan, if appropriate, and preliminary building plans, sections, and elevations, and may include some combination of study models, perspective sketches, or digital representations. Preliminary selections of major building systems and construction materials shall be noted on the drawings or described in writing. Everybody got it? Site plan, schematic floor plans, building plans, sections, elevations. Do we do enlarged plans in here?
No.
Do we do wall sections in here?
Nope.
Do we do 3D models in here?
Maybe.
Yeah, we do, right? Do we do renderings in here?
It's optional, like, yeah.
Yeah. Big picture items, very big picture items. Do we begin to select HVAC systems?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Mm,
do. But do we know how exactly the HVAC system works?
No.
No, right? So you guys get the gist of it, right? Like in this case, we don't even have a grid, like a building grid or any of that stuff. We just have a bunch of blocks and relationships of them and things like that, and a general idea how it's gonna work. We don't have dimension grid to the nearest inch. We don't have any of that stuff. Okay, these plans are typically 1/4, 1/16 I mean, no, 1/8, 1/16, maybe 1/4, but I would say 1/8. That's what we have. All right. Think about that. So section 3.2.5.1, the architect shall consider sustainable alternatives. This is a mandate now because AIA wants us to. I mean, everybody wants us to be sustainable. So they're putting this language in here to say be sustainable. Like I want you to be sustainable. That's part of your ethical duty. So I'm gonna tell you about it right now. So we got it, such as material choices and building orientation, together with other considerations based on program and aesthetics in developing a design that is consistent with the owner's program, schedule, and budget for the cost of the work. Now, programming world right there for you, Miranda. So those are the things we care about during programming. Building orientation, general material choices, sustainable design alternatives, where will you put a building on a slope and things like that. So we want to know things like that, all right? But it's all in terms of owner's program, schedule, and budget. It does say aesthetics. That's kind of secondary. Program, schedule, and budget. It's what we're trying to meet in here, all right? So all of these design moves that are sustainable gotta relate to cost, schedule, and program. The owner may obtain more advanced sustainable design services as a supplementary service. Let's say we're not a super sort of sophisticated net zero homemaking company. And there's this other company, there's a consulting company that does all of that stuff. Well, they can hire them as an additional service, or they can hire us as an additional service also. We might have a niche on that and we do some of those things, but we're not providing it for this project. So that we can tell them how much it's gonna be, and we may be able to do it. Section 3.2.5.2, the architect shall consider the value of alternative materials, building systems, and equipment, together with other considerations based on program and aesthetics, in developing a design for the project that is consistent with the owner's program, schedule, and budget for the cost of the work. What is that saying? Well, when you put in on your schematic drawings a lookable storefront system or store, metal panel, like you just put in the name of the company. You're not putting the specific product. But have you even found out how much it's gonna cost? Do you even know that thing is like $1 million already? Like, do you even know? Do you even have a clue, right? So as an architect, you should know. You should call the manufacturer. You should take some time. In fact, call them up and bring them over to your office and have them do a lunch and learn for free. They'll bring food for free and they'll do the lunch and learn for free. Come on, just have them talk to you about that stuff so that you have a clue. You cannot be clueless about that stuff because then you're not respecting the owner's budget. Then you're just breaking your own mandate to design to the owner's budget. You guys know we're supposed to design to the owner's budget, right? There's some architects out there, that don't design to the owner's budget. They just say, you will have to meet that budget. You'll have to make it work because we want that Bilbao museum, okay? So you're gonna have to make it work. You're gonna have to do a fundraising, okay? So that's not what we're supposed to do as architects. We're supposed to design to the owner's budget. So section 3.2.6, the architect shall submit to the owner an estimate for the cost of the work prepared in accordance with section 6.3. Guys, this is very important. So we submit the drawings I just mentioned to you, those general plans, sections, elevations, perspectives, models. We also begin selecting systems very schematically and consider their costs of all the systems and assemblies before we even begin putting their names on the drawings. But we also create an estimate for the cost of the work, all right? And this estimate, guys, is it gonna be using actual wall assemblies and systems to know how much this is gonna cost? What do we use on this estimate to make it? Anybody? Miranda.
Yeah, wouldn't it just be to schematic level, like the size of the building?
So what do we use?
Maybe a costing program?
No, but what nomenclature or units do we use to be able to price this building?
In square footage?
That's right. Exactly. Because we wouldn't be doing a cost per wall or a cost per like window. We don't even know. We're gonna factor in a cost per square foot. We know how many square feet this is, and then maybe we throw in some numbers for things that we actually can anticipate, like systems that we know. The HVAC system, we used it on another project. It came out X and X. It's gonna be X and X, generally speaking. All right. So we can mix precedent projects that we've used and a cost per square footage and find the middle line between those two to create our, you know, or we can hire a cost estimator and they'll figure out how to do it. But it will be a cost per square foot at this level. I mean, just think about it. You don't even have doors. You don't have doors. You don't have floors. You don't have windows. You don't have roofs. You know you're gonna have roofs, and you know how many square feet of roof you're gonna have, but you don't know much more, right? You're gonna have to factor that in. And then lastly, the architect shall submit the schematic design documents to the owner and request the owner's approval. Do we move on to design development without the owner's approval? No.
No.
So that's the next step, 3.3. Based on the owner's approval of the schematic design documents and on the owner's authorization of any adjustments in the project requirements and the budget for the cost of the work, the architect shall prepare design development drawings for the owner's approval. We begin with approval and end with approval on that first sentence. You guys get it? So why are they saying this? Well, they're saying this because guess what? We did our estimate and it turns out that the owner has a $5 million budget and we're at 3 millions. He might want to be making the building a little bit bigger. Hey, guess what? I think that now we can squeeze in an, a little helipad for our emergency department. Let's put it in. It's gonna be $1 million more. Sure, let's do it. So that changes that. Now, because the owner can afford now a little bit more on their project, um, does our services change or fee change? Now we're adding a helipad to our emergency department example that I'm making up. So do we charge more for that? Yes, we do. Absolutely. We're meeting their budget. It's working. They're adding more scope. That changes our initial information. Remember, our initial information includes the program, and the program would have included a helipad if they wanted it. So now they're adding it. So we gotta be adjusting our scope of services and our fee accordingly. So, and again, everything's got to be approved. So when you get a practice management question, you don't move on to the next step without an approval. And if they ask you, when do you create an estimate? Remember that you create an estimate at the end of a schematic design, at the end of construction of the design development, and at the end of construction documents, 3 times. Okay. And we're gonna see it here, but I'm getting ahead of myself so that you remember this because I know some of you are testing this week. So the design development documents shall illustrate. All right, let's go through that right now, real quick. Why are we supposed to be doing a schematic the design development? So schematic design documents shall illustrate and describe the development of the approved schematic design documents and shall consist of drawings and other documents including plans, sections, elevations, typical construction details, and diagrammatic layouts of building systems to fix and describe the size and character of the project as to architectural, structural, mechanical, and electrical systems and other appropriate elements. We're getting into the systems, elements, assemblies, details, right? So the plans that were at 1/8 could be being enlarged at this point and be a 1/4, half an inch, right? The building sections that we had before that were just gray, probably all graded out, pro shade, right? It was just gray, might now be showing installation, but also callouts for wall sections and roof details, right? The systems that we just said we're gonna be using a hydronic heating. Now maybe actually showing hydronic heating native system, blah, 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 X and X BTUs, right? It might have calculations in it and things like that. So it's a lot more, intricate, right? So again, it shall include plans, sections, elevations, typical construction details, and diagrammatic layouts of building systems to fix and describe the size and character of the project as to architectural, structural, mechanical, and electrical systems and other appropriate elements. The design development documents shall include outline and specifications that identify major materials and systems and establish in general their quality levels. This is the first time we see the spec book being used. And it may be just outline, division 00, division 1, division 2, division 3. And within those divisions, we're going to talk about generally how the masonry should work, how the concrete should work, and how much of it, and how the quality of that. How much of it will be shown on the drawings, but the quality levels of that, all right? It gets done in here. This is the first time we see the word specification, and it's just an outline and specification. Headers, divisions, and applicable sections of that, right? Then we go to section 3.3.2. The architect shall update the estimate of the cost of the work prepared in accordance with section 6.3. You update it. Section 3.3.3. The architect shall submit the design development drawings to the owner, advise the owner of any adjustment to the estimate of the cost of the work, and request the owner's approval. Is that clear, everybody? How do you believe we're gonna begin section 3.4 without reading it too much? What's the first thing that we need to have before we start? Miranda.
You need to submit the design development drawings to the owner and have the owner's approval, and then also have them, before you proceed to construction documents, approve. That's all.
Turns out we did before we just happened to have added a helipad to our project because the owner had a $5 million budget and the estimate for the cost of work schematic came at $3 million. We added a helipad and now we're detailing that helipad, and it turns out that we're at $5.5 million here because we know much more about it. This is much more accurate. We know the systems and assemblies, and we recommend the owner to adjust their budget by $500,000. So they gotta either say nope, you adjust your drawings. Now, if the owner wants to say nope, I'm not paying $500,000 more. You architect adjust your drawings. What do we do? Here, right here, very early, before we even do construction documents, because we haven't moved to construction documents. The owners say, you 5.5 million is not cutting it for me. What do we do? Miranda?
We revise our drawings to suit their budget.
Do we get paid for that revision?
Yeah.
No. At no cost at all, we got to revise those drawings to meet that $5 million budget. All right? And it may mean telling the owner, we can't afford the helipad, or we can't afford, to use the tile that we wanted to use on that place. We're going to use another one. This is when you begin providing alternates early on and trying to figure out how to meet that budget. All right? You can use alternates, you can use allowances, you can use things like that to be able to figure out how you can meet that budget. You just can't show up at the end of the design development with a $5.5 million project when it's supposed to be 5 million. As an architect, you're supposed to be at that. Now, if you are at 5.5, you could advise the owner to increase the budget. And if they did and they sign off on your design development, then you don't have to revise anything, right? You got to let them know. So let's go back to 3.4. Okay, this one's going to take a little time. So based on the owner's approval, thank you, Miranda, that's the first thing we need to get, of the design development documents and or the owner's authorization of any adjustments in the project requirements and the budget for the cost of the work, if they actually increased it by $500,000, then we proceed. The architect shall prepare construction documents for the owner's approval. This is great because it tells us, Mr. Architect, you're designing for somebody and you got to have somebody's approval prior and after any move that you make, right? Yesterday, I was doing a project in which I am actually the contractor too. And I was saying, oh, I wouldn't want to have a door there. It's not center. I'm not doing that. And then I looked at them and I'm like, sorry, guys, it's actually your project. Where do you want the door? I'm just gonna let you know whether you have clearances to be able to do that. But I wouldn't like it there because it's not center. We want a center. It will look better center. All right. So sometimes we get so like now, like my ego is all the way through the sky because I'm not only the architect, I'm also the contractor. Like I'm getting away with a lot of things that the owner doesn't know I'm doing for them. There are things that they should know about, like the niche in the bathroom. Like I'm putting the niche and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do a niche that's gonna wrap around here. And then I realized when I was talking to them, I'm like, do you actually like that? Because I'm changing my own design. I'm changing something that you have already approved. I wouldn't want to proceed with that until I tell you. So it turns out they didn't want that because we're gonna have to build another wall to be able to build that niche, and then we're gonna lose real estate. So we don't want to lose real estate space. So remember, this is a checking point. Remember who you're working for. So that was my 2 cents there. So then the construction documents, I'm gonna do this again. What are we supposed to provide? The construction documents shall illustrate and describe the further development of the approved design development documents and shall consist of drawings and specifications setting forth in detail the quality levels and performance criteria of materials and systems and other requirements for the construction of the work. The owner and architect acknowledge that in order to perform the work, the contractor will provide additional information, including shop drawings, product data, samples, and other similar submittals, which the architect shall review in accordance with section 3.6.4. Right? This is really saying we need really wall section details, like the full shenanigans that we go through, like the full set of drawings. The design development set of drawings might be 20 pages. This might end up being 25, 30 pages more, right? Like 10 pages more. Or it might not be more pages, but it might be more details within those pages that we have already outlined. All right. It's very detailed. But here is the first time that we actually talk about quality levels in detail and performance criteria. All right. Here's when we really know what that 2-hour rated wall is and how it's supposed to perform. All right. It also does tell us that there's gonna be more stuff. This is not everything, right? We're gonna need shop drawings for those cabinets because the architect's drawings are not supposed to be a substitute for shop drawings. We're showing design intent. Shop drawings are supposed to show construction intent. How is it built intent? Buildability intent. All right. So it's saying that. There are other things that we're gonna be including in here, guys. And I'll tell you more about it in a minute. But section 3.4.2, the architect shall incorporate the design requirements of governmental authorities having jurisdiction over the project in the construction documents. So they may need some, for reviews documents, affidavits documents, and things like that. So you got to provide those too. In Massachusetts, they require for any project above 35,000 cubic feet, I believe it is, affidavit, construction control affidavit. So you got to provide those. Section 3.4.3, during the development of the construction documents, the architect shall assist the owner in development and preparation of, these are the other things I wanted to tell you, procurement information that describe the time, place, and conditions of bidding, including bidding or proposal forms, the form of agreement between the owner and contractor, the conditions of the contract for construction, A201, right? Remember A201. But there is a general, which is the A201, but there is also the supplementary, which is part of the spec. and other conditions. The architect shall also compile a project manual that includes the conditions of the contract for construction and the specifications and may include bidding requirements and sample forms. All right. The architect shall include the an update, the architect shall update, I'm sorry, the estimate for the cost of the work prepared in accordance with section 6.3. All right. So you create it for the first time doing a schematic. You update it for the first time doing design development. You update it for the second and last time at the end of construction documents. Does that make sense? And then it says the architect shall submit the construction documents to the owners, advise the owner of any adjustments to the estimate of the cost of the work, take any action required under section 6.5, and request the owner's approval. That is what we do during the construction documents section. So I'm going to pause it in here for a minute, and I'm gonna take a breather. And I do wanna go to section 3.5, but I'm gonna take a breather. Is everybody good with that? All good? So I'm gonna stop this for a second, pause it right here, or stop it right here.